Hi guys, today we're going to be playing with a palette that I have been waiting for what feels like such a long time. It really hasn't been that long, but I've just been really excited about this one. And this is going to be my first Love Luxe Beauty palette. I haven't tried anything from them. So this is the For the Love of Fall palette. This is what the carton comes like. So it has a sleeve, which is pink. And I feel like this is kind of weird for the color story inside. Like, I wish that the sleeve was like dark orange with maybe like gold instead of silver. I don't know, I just feel like it doesn't really like fit with the rest of the packaging. So here's what the palette itself looks like, and then the color story on the inside looks like this. So it's absolutely beautiful, especially for someone who's not really into a lot of browns. And for me to have a fall palette that doesn't have any browns, it's perfect. So I'm really excited about this. So this little palette actually retails for $35, which I feel like is maybe a little bit expensive because I thought this palette was going to be bigger, but honestly, this is tiny. Like, this is really, really small. Like, I was almost having a hard time swatching this because my fingers were too big to fit into the pants. I mean, not really, but it's kind of like the small Colourpop palettes, you know what I mean? Where you have to like really swirl in there to get your finger into the shadows. That's kind of how I felt with this, but I mean, the price doesn't really matter that much because I know that I'm never going to get through these eyeshadows because I just have so many eyeshadows. So the only thing that I really care about is the quality of this. So that's what we're going to test out. So from swatching this palette, they all seemed like they swatched really well. I will say that some of the shimmers are a little bit less intense than I was kind of expecting. Like, the gold shimmer is super nice, and then the other shimmers are kind of just like shimmers, like very basic, but we'll see how it works. I'm still really excited to test this out, and I love the color story in this. I think this is just so fun. But I know there were a lot of people on their site and on Instagram and stuff kind of wondering about the swatches of this because there were a lot of different pictures floating around on the internet with like different saturation of the swatches, and some that kind of looked photoshopped and some that looked filtered, and they didn't really know what to expect because the palette looked so much lighter than the swatches. And I will say that from having this in real life, I think it's the background that's kind of throwing it off, because it's hard when you have something that's kind of like shining and holographic in the background to really show the shadows themselves like on camera. Like, it just doesn't come off true to color. I don't know what it is, but in real life, like, these look very nice and bright and saturated, and like they look like they have a lot of depth to them, and I'm really excited to try these out. So that's what we're going to do. So I'm gonna prime my eyes with my Natasha Denona eyeshadow primer. Been really liking this primer. Again, if you haven't seen the review I did on this, I will link that in the corner. So I'm just gonna go ahead and prime, and then we're gonna get into trying these. I do want to try a lot of these on my eyes, and I really feel like I might even be able to use them all because they all just like go so nicely together that I don't really think that's going to be a problem. So I think where I want to start off is I want to take the yellow and I want to put that in the inner third of my crease. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go yellow to pink to orange. I think that's where I want to go. I could also go, actually I'm probably going to go yellow, orange, pink, and then I'll do possibly this dark shade here in my outer corner of my eye, and then I'll play with some of the greens like on my lower lash line. I think that's where I want to end up. So putting my brush into the palette for the first time, it's a little bit kick-uppy. There's definitely some kick-up in the pan in this, but that's not really something that bothers me. But I always like to mention it in case it bothers someone else. So this is very much a cool tone yellow from just my first impression putting it on my eye here. It could also be that I've just been playing with so many warm toned yellows lately that this is more on the cool tone side, but I really like that because I don't have a lot of cool tone yellows. So this is nice. I mean, it's going on my eye pretty opaquely here, but we'll see how this is going to end up looking when all is said and done, because sometimes the yellows tend to fade pretty quickly. So let me know if any of you guys have tried anything from Love Luxe Beauty before, because I've heard a lot of good things and I really like the themes of all of the palettes that they have on their site. I don't know why I haven't pulled the trigger and bought any of them before, but they haven't, I don't know, they just haven't been perfect for me yet. And this was like the first palette that I felt like was screaming to my soul, if you know what I mean. So next up, like I said, does have a little bit of kick up here. I'm gonna go into the orange, which it doesn't really have any names. So the names of this are on the back, which I personally don't like, because if it doesn't have it like right in front of me, I'm not even going to look at the name. So I'm just gonna say it's the orange, you know, unless there's like 4 oranges, then maybe I will be particular enough to actually say the names. But for now, I'm just not going to bother because they're not right in front of me, and so I don't care. So I'm gonna go ahead and pack this in the middle of my crease, and that's really nice and pigmented. Wow, I was not expecting that. Just going to blend that into the yellow and also just kind of work on the blend as we go here. And this is my Morphe E36 brush, if you were wondering. This is my favorite for doing like 3-colored crease work because it's very nice and precise and still being fluffy. So I think I'm gonna end up doing a half cut crease today because I do want to make sure I have room for a lot of these shadows. I will say I do feel like these shadows are performing kind of like neon shadows in that I have a little bit of a hard time like mixing them together and building them up, and they seem like they don't want to stick to my eye like 100%, but we'll see what happens when I keep going here. I'm obviously not going to judge them yet until I've completed my eye look here, but that's just like my thought that pops into my head that these might be a little bit tricky to work with and build on. So next I'm gonna go into the pink matte here, which is this shadow, and I can see now just like looking in the viewfinder just how washed out this palette looks when I'm holding it on camera, because in real life it's so much brighter and then more intense than it is, you know, on camera, because I think it's just the lights in the background that's really throwing it off. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pack this in my outer corner here, as well as make sure I'm blending it into the orange. This one also does seem to have a little bit of fallout here, which is kind of surprising given that I really am just packing on the color here and I'm not going in that heavily. So like I said, I do feel like these are sort of performing like loose pigments or like neon pigments, which is up to you to decide whether or not it's a good thing or a bad thing, because they are really nice and pigmented, but I do feel like they're a little bit tricky to just work with and get to look non-patchy here, because I'm going in a lot and really packing on shadow and making sure that it's really pressed into my skin here. And that is not wiping away, so that's not ideal. So I really have to be careful to just not get a lot of fallout with this, because I feel like it's gonna be a pain to trying to clean that up. So I think what I'm gonna go ahead and do next is I'm gonna do a half cut crease, and then I'm gonna go into the darkest of the shade in this palette and put that in the outer corner of my eye, as well as wrap it down to my lower lash line, and then we'll continue from there afterwards. So I'm gonna go ahead and take my P. Louise base, and I'm going to do a half cut crease with this. Alright, so the cut crease is done, and I will say I kind of feel like some of the colors in my crease are fading a little bit, so I'm going to go in with a bit more of that orange here. Like, I just don't feel like these are sticking to my eye as good as they probably could here. So I think I'm going to leave it like this. So I'm next going to go into the middle shade here, like I said, and this is a shimmer, so I'm going to go ahead and spray that. And I will say that I wish that this shadow was a matte instead, because I just prefer the darkest shade in my palettes to be a matte, because I just think that it's more flattering on my eye to deepen up with a matte than it is to deepen up with a shimmer. But I mean, it's fine. I'll definitely make this work. So it is going on my eye really, really nicely here. And like I said, I'm also going to go ahead and wrap this around to my lower lash line here, and also just blend it into my crease a little bit. But this is blending out really nicely, so it's not like a super intense shimmer. It's definitely more of like a satiny kind of shade, because I did spray it like you saw, and I don't feel like it's really showing up like super metallic or anything. So I guess since it is the darkest shade in the palette, I don't mind it not being super metallic if it's easy to work with and blend like I'm doing now, because I do feel like this is looking really, really nice now. So let's see, what do I want to do next? I'm thinking I want to take a little bit of the dark green shimmer. I just want to use the non-existent mirror in this palette. I'm just going to tap out my creases here, because this P. Louise base is just notorious for creasing on my eyes. It just always does that, and I can't really avoid it. So I'm going to switch to a flat brush here, and I'm going to dip into the dark green shimmer here, which is kind of like an olivey green, but with a little bit more saturation. I don't know what I would really call the shade. It's almost like a mossy kind of shade. I don't really know. I'm going to go ahead and put that in the middle of my lid here and just kind of blend that into the outer corner shade that I put down. And then I think for the inner portion of my lid, I'm going to use that beautiful champagne gold shade. And I feel like I could say the same about this shadow too, that it's definitely more of a kind of satiny shimmer than it is a very foiled intense shimmer, and it is blending in really nicely to the outer corner shade. And this was my first impression with the swatches too, is that the metallics aren't like super intense, they're just kind of shiny, you know? So next up, I'm gonna go into the, wait, what do I want to do? Do I want to do anything else on my lower lash line here? I was thinking I wanted to use all of these shades, but there's a couple of shades here that I just don't think I'll be able to use, but I think I'm gonna take this one, which is sort of like a peachy shimmer. It's really, really pretty, so I'm gonna pop that first in the inner portion of my lower lash line, and then to finish off, I'm going to take the metallic kind of goldy champagne shade. Just gonna pop that in the inner portion of my lower lash line. I'm gonna leave a little bit of room just in my inner corner so that I can wrap that gold shade around. But this is really, really pretty. This reminds me a lot of one of the shades in the Jeffree Star Jawbreaker palette. I forget the name of it, but this is so similar. Lastly, to finish off, I'm gonna dip into this champagne shade up here. This one seems a little bit crumbly on my brush here, and I'm having a hard time picking up a lot of this. Just gonna go ahead and put that on the rest of my lid. I feel like this shadow definitely swatched better than how it is applying on the eye, so I need to find a different brush because I'm having a hard time picking this up with a very flat kind of synthetic brush. So I'm not sure when my camera turned off exactly, but I was saying that I feel like this is a little bit tough to pick up on a synthetic brush, so I had to kind of switch to like a scratchier type of brush. I don't really know exactly what kind of hair this is, but this is the Morphe M124 brush. This one is a little bit better for trying to pick up shimmers that are sort of on the crumblier side. Just going to gently wrap this around and meet that up with the lower lash line color. And I think just to finish off, I'm going to take a little bit more of that pink matte, and I'm just going to go ahead and wrap this around to my lower lash line as well. It just helped it blend out here a bit. And just so I can smudge out that red that I used. And I think that's where I want to leave it with this eye look. Now, I do think that this is looking really pretty, and I'm excited to finish off. I'm wondering if I should do something yellow in my waterline. I feel like I always do yellow in my waterline. Maybe I'll do green today. Maybe I'll do Electric Daisy from Colourpop. I feel like that's going to match pretty well. And then I'll do some liner mascara, put on a lipstick, and then I'll come back and I will show you the final look and tell you kind of like my first impression thoughts on this palette. Okay, so here is the look all complete. I really like the end result of this. For my lipstick today, I used one of the Safiya Nygaard and Colourpop collab. I don't know if you guys follow Safiya, but I've been a fan of hers for so long, and like her name trips me up so bad because it's Safiya Nygaard, which in Norwegian, it's a very Norwegian name, so we would say Nygaard. So like, I don't know how to pronounce this, so I totally get like how so many Swedish people are like, I don't know how to pronounce Linda Hallberg because they're used to like Hallberg being pronounced in a different way, you know, so I can totally relate to like the Safiya, but I feel like Safiya herself says Nygaard, so that's just what I'm going to say. Long story short, this is the lipstick that I'm wearing. It's in Bury Me In Lipsticks. It's super, super cute. It took me forever to apply because I am the worst at applying bullet lipsticks, but that's what's on my mouth, and I feel like it goes really nice with this look. So as for my final, or for my first impression thoughts on this palette, I feel like it's a little bit overpriced for what you're getting. I don't feel like the quality of the shadows is worth $35, and you also don't get a lot of shadows in here. I feel like the mattes are a little bit hard to work with. I do need to play more with this to really figure out like how this builds and blends, but I feel like it performs very much like neon pigments, like pressed pigments, in that they have a hard time kind of sticking to your eye. They don't blend very well and they fade away very easily. That's kind of like my impression with the matte so far. Like I feel like the yellow in my inner corner here is kind of faded. I'm also not like super impressed by the shimmers. I feel like the one shimmer that's supposed to be like the foiled shimmer, the one that swatches the best, like this one. I feel like it's very chunky, it's very hard to work with, it's tough to get like smooth on your eyes, it's tough to pick up on a brush. I don't love it. As for the other ones are fine. I find them to be a lot easier to work with, but they're also not as intenseful. Wait, intenseful? That's not a word. Intense? But you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I feel like it's a cute palette, but I don't think it's worth the money. If this was from Colourpop, I probably would have said better things about this if this was like a $12 palette, you know what I mean? But for $35, I don't think this palette is necessarily worth the money, but it is a cute palette, and I am probably going to do 2 more looks with this just so I can kind of make up my mind on the formula on this, because I'm still not really sure like how I really feel about this. But just my first impression thoughts is that I feel like this isn't worth as much as it costs, but it's still, you know, a cute palette, and I don't think that I will not want to play with this again, because I do like my look, and I don't think that it was like that hard to achieve, but I was just a little bit frustrated when working with some of these colors. But in the end, it turned out pretty good. So those are going to be my thoughts. Let me know if you picked up this palette. Let me know how you feel about the brand in general. If you have tried anything else, I would love to know your thoughts on this formula, because this is the first time that I'm trying this. Maybe this palette is different from the other ones that they have out. I really don't know. So that's gonna be it for today. If you want to see some other first impression videos that I've done, I'll pop a few up on the screen so you can go watch those if you want to. And if you're new to my channel, I would love it if you would consider subscribing, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.